But then he unveiled what they were, and they all said, ew, we wouldn't recommend those. Now, I may have to ask some of well, forget it. There are regional differences. Steak with blue cheese and broccoli, or you could have salmon with cream cheese or cream sauce. There are lots of ways to do a low carbohydrate diet, and it's not something that has to be untasty, or one of my colleagues, Diane Stadler at the University of Oregon, has a data set of low carb versus low fat. She hasn't published it yet, but she came up with this term, food disinterest. And I said, well, what do you mean, Diane? She said, well, people didn't seem to care much about food, so we called it food disinterest. And it's pretty high in the disinterest scale when you do Atkins, Eric. I said, well, what do you mean? She says, well, people don't really want to eat. And I'm like, well, is that bad? I give pills to people to suppress their appetite so they lose weight. So she's not a weight loss person. It's a PhD scientist. She's trying to figure out how to explain the total appetite suppression that some people get when they don't eat carbohydrates. I say, well, carbs make you hungry. Don't eat carbs. You're not hungry. How many of you believe that carbs make you hungry, and if you don't eat carbs? Can I get a photo of this, please? Well, it's just overwhelmingly obvious, and yet if there's no study about it, it can't be true. So we hand out a list of foods that people choose, the foods that they like. I don't tell anyone to eat anything. One woman came back and said, oh, I can't eat all this bacon. And I said, well, when did I ever say you had to eat bacon? Oh, okay. There's a popular belief of what it is, and then there's the reality of how you can do it. And a lot of people need that kind of coaching. It's great to see new dietitians and practitioners popping up with that knowledge and assistance, because a lot of people need that help. So is it a high-protein diet? When you look at this is the first sort of estimate of what people were eating on an ad-lib, low-carb, ketogenic diet, Atkins kind of diet. We said nothing about calories in the teaching, and yet they reduced their calories to 1,400 a day. Their estimate was about 2,000, 2,200 at baseline. So they reduced their calories 500 to 700 deficit, we call it, per day, without talking about calories. And the protein intake was about the same as they were eating before. One patient said to me, well, that's kind of obvious. I just eat the meat and the veggie, and I don't eat the starch like before. So when you look at the amount of food that people are eating, it's just without the starch. So the best paper, if I said, here's what you read, and this is what I make my medical students at Duke read, is the paper by Gunther Boden, where they had people on a metabolic ward, meaning they locked them up. And so they knew exactly what people were eating. I always have that nagging question in the back of my mind. Did people really tell me everything they're eating on those estimates of what they're eating? It doesn't seem to bother my colleagues at Harvard who do the nutritional epidemiology studies, or as we're going to hear about the T. Colin Campbell studies. It doesn't seem to bother them that they're just asking people what they're eating, and oh, it must be true. La 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 la. So Gunther Boden did this great paper, 2005. I haven't seen anyone do another one. There's a saying in science that the hallmark of science is replication. But nobody's able to get money to replicate these studies. That's a sad state currently. The protein intake was about the same as before, the fat intake is about the same as before, and the carbohydrate intake went way down on an ad-lib, low carbohydrate, very low carbohydrate, ketogenic diet. So some people can overeat or get lots of protein more than before if they're using protein shakes and things that aren't natural foods. But I've not really seen anyone go over the 200 grams a day, which is what the consensus says is, you don't want to do that for very long. So I think what's happened here is that people misunderstand the percent protein of calories for the absolute amount of protein. So the percent protein in the diet has gone up, but the absolute amount of protein has not. And it's the absolute amount of protein that matters metabolically, not the percent of protein in the diet. Next bullet, next myth. Low-carb ketogenic diets cause harmful ketosis. Can you all say that? Harmful ketosis. Now, healthy ketosis. Healthy ketosis. Or Steve Phinney would say nutritional ketosis. Nutritional ketosis. So you got to have that roll off your tongue, like you've said it a million times. You know, you're selling this idea that low carb. Oh, wrong audience. No, I guess we all are to a certain degree. But do low carb ketogenics cause harmful ketosis? Well, the first thing you need to know is what a ketone is and what it does. Ketone bodies are molecules that provide energy. That's all they are. Ketones can be used by all the cells except cells that don't have the fuel utilization system to burn fat, and that's in the mitochondria of the cell. So red blood cells cannot burn ketones, but fortunately red blood cells are in the blood, and that's where the glucose is. Curious connection there. So the glucose is where it needs to be. It's in the blood, because these blood cells need the glucose. It doesn't need to be in the cells, the other cells, but it's in the blood. That's a good place. Now, couple that with the only thing, well, the most convenient thing we can measure in medicine is the blood. So this is why we get confused about how important glucose is, because we're measuring where the glucose is, where it needs to be to give the red blood cells the energy they need. Cornea, lens, retina, renal medulla, these all need glucose as well. Fortunately, the kidney can make its own glucose. It's as if the body has a way to maintain and ensure that a very sensitive area, the renal medulla, this is the part of the kidney near the ending of the urine where it comes out, that needs glucose, and the kidney can make its own glucose. That's pretty nice. Ketone levels increase when dieting, but not much. So in fact, overnight, people have ketones even if they're eating a mixed diet, if they haven't eaten much in the evening, which reminds me of that, remember that Palmolive commercial where Madge is getting her fingers soaked and they talk about oh, it's Palmolive and you're soaking in it. Oh, so you can say, well, ketones, well, you have them too. Oh no, trying to make light. So I've been heavily influenced by Tom Naughton's work, Fathead. Can we just say hooray for Fathead? And don't confuse that with the Fathead posters online. Fathead the movie is where you get to it. But using humor has been very helpful for me in educating patients when they come in so seriously and without much knowledge. And then you show them things that just are like, oh, wow, I never thought of that. And then you can laugh about it. For most people it works, not everyone. But so on a low-carb ketogenic diet, now Jeff Volek has done a lot of this work, and Will Yancey has done a lot of this work. Will Yancey is a colleague of mine at Duke and at the Durham VA Medical Center. And what we found is that the ketone levels go up a little bit in the blood, but not much. But then the arterial pH, whether there's acidosis or harmful acidosis, it just doesn't happen. Now, it may happen rarely. So the other weird thing in medicine is that if something happens once, you can write a case report about it and get it in a major journal, and then doctors who know very little about the underlying physiology will see the one case report, 1 in 10 million or how many million have done it, and then they say, oh, well, look, it causes ketosis and harmful acidosis, and even in that case study that's out there, there's no guarantee or understanding of what they were really doing. They say I did Atkins. Well, what does that mean? So you have to, where the information comes from is, it's unfortunate that a case study can erase all the science, kind of like a press release can erase all of the knowledge that you have. And so you just have to be aware of that and say that, well, if that happens, it's pretty rare.